future is now.
So welcome everyone. I'm super excited to have a special guest with me today. His name's Brad from Zync Agency. We've worked with Brad and his team for at least over the last 5 years. We continue to work with them. Brad and his team are highly creative, highly dynamic, and have really been a key factor in our success. So I wanted to share that abundantly with all of our listeners and viewers. Brad, thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure.
Yeah, so please tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your agency and what sets you apart.
I will. So we are Zync Agency, as you said. You can find us at zync.ca, zync.ca. So that's our home on the internet. But we are a brand and digital agency. So we help organizations everywhere from not-for-profits to startups to large organizations either create their brand from scratch, rebrand, or do programs or campaigns that drive their brand forward in their industry or in the general marketplace. So that's where we really focus. We don't specialize in any one industry because we really think that our information and our experience across all industries is what makes us stand out. So we're not looking for organizations that are looking to be the same in their industry. So, we're an agency that's done 12 financial services organizations. So now we're going to help you. We have a program and a process for doing that. We look at it a little bit differently. If you want to stand out in your industry, come to us because we're going to look at other industries and other influencers who can help to take you and make you at the forefront of your industry.
Yeah, and I think we've experienced, and one of the reasons we chose to work with you was that multi-industry experience. As a consulting firm, we too are multi-industry. And what that brings is this broad range of perspective that allows you to sort of, borrow from industries and ideas, and that synergy is there. So we definitely experienced that with you, and I think it's an advantage. So let's get right into what everybody's immersed in right now with this coronavirus pandemic. How do you think it's affecting the brands and your clients right now? And what do you think? Is it business or business as usual, or what do you think it means for us as a brand, as our business right now?
Yeah, I think that the impact is huge, probably one of the biggest impacts that's ever happened to business, I think. And it's the same with brand. Our view is that brand is a business asset. So even though we're all really focused on staying safe, staying home, trying to flatten the curve and really caring about our loved ones but also feeling anxious about everything that's going on, at the same time, we have to be thinking about our businesses and how do we continue to either bring work in or do work for people and continue to have our businesses operate. So as we're doing that, we really have to look at brand as a tool. One of the key things about brand right now is that it can't be business as usual because the organizations that are doing business as usual, people are kind of looking at that and going, what are you doing? Are you not realizing what's going on here?
Tone deaf, yeah.
Yeah, it really comes across as tone deaf and not listening. And at the core of it all, brand is basically the promise that you give to your clients or customers and all of your stakeholders, really. And if that promise just continues to go along that it's always been, which is, for example, if you're a restaurant right now and your promise is, well, we're going to continue to deliver, food the way we always have, people are like, what are you talking about? You can't come and sit down at your tables or, so you have to be able to pivot and you have to be able to understand that the brand needs to change. And that includes your messaging, your promise, how you go out to the marketplace, and how you interact with all of your stakeholders.
Yeah. And so what do you think the best thing we can do right now for business? We made the comment about tone deaf. So assuming that all of our listeners and viewers are not tone deaf and that they are very sensitive to the current reality and they are pivoting, what are some of the best practices, the best things we can be doing as a brand right now to not only have empathy for the collective reality that we're in, but have our businesses offer help and a beacon of light during this time and that is aligned with our brand?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I would say there's three things that you need to do. The first one is listen. Listen to what your customers and clients need, right? Listen to them if you can. And if you can't listen to them, listen to what's going on and figure out how do we best figure out how to go forward in all of this. The second thing you need to do is take a really hard, strong look at your business and say, where do we fit in this current environment? a lot of emails went out about washing hands and social distancing from organizations that really shouldn't have been necessarily giving that information. And I think you have to ask yourself, should we be talking right now, or should we just be listening right now? So listening, making sure that you understand where your brand fits in the overall element. And then the third one, and this is the most important one, Cheryl, be authentic. This is not the time for the hard sell. This is not the time for you to say, well, we're trying to have business as usual. We're trying to do the same things that we've been doing before. This is not the time for now. So many brands have a great voice and a great authenticity. Now is the time to use that to its full extent and really be look back at your mission, vision, values and say, okay, what are the core elements of our mission, vision, values? What is it that we're trying to deliver with our brand? What is the promise that we've made to our customers and clients? And then use that as the lens for where you go from here. And it's going to be different for every business. But really, that's what's going to help drive your brand now and prepare your brand for whatever comes next.
Now, what I love about what you're saying is a couple of examples are coming to mind for me. Like locally, Van City, they have now gone to 0% credit cards. Like they're taking leadership around, we know the current reality. And Van City is known to be a community-based credit union, so they're modeling that with their brand. Also, you see these examples of alcohol producers now creating hand sanitizer, or in Canada, masks being created by Ford Motor Company. Like, we're seeing. To me, those are examples of brands that are saying we don't want anything from you right now. We actually want to help the situation. And I find myself, when I see on LinkedIn the brands that are just selling their usual stuff, I actually feel repulsed and almost like it makes me feel bad, because it's like I'm not feeling this way right now. And I love your comment about listening, that even with us at Next Mapping, even though we're a future of work consultancy and people look to me, I've been listening for the last 3 weeks because I didn't want to. I just produced a video today that went out, but I didn't want to do that before really tuning into people's realities, because it felt to me that it would be self-serving or not helpful if I did it any sooner than that. So that was just a personal feeling. Yeah,
it's true. And that's a really good point, Cheryl, is listen to your gut. Your gut will tell you what the right thing to do is. And if it feels wrong to you, it's probably going to feel wrong to others as well.
Right.
If it feels right to you, others will probably feel the same way too. It's interesting because Subaru, another example of a brand, Subaru they had bought media for some television commercials. And instead of running their regular television commercials, they didn't talk about their cars at all. They simply used that pre-bought time. They created a commercial that said thank you to all the healthcare workers. And they ran that in all of their spots.
Yes.
They put their logo at the end just to let you know that the brand was still there. But it really said, you know what, now is not the time to talk about us or our cars. Now is the time to talk about the people who are risking their lives every single day to help get us through this time. So, really, really strong advantage for a brand to go out. If Canada Goose is making those masks in Canada as well. And the distilleries are making that hand sanitizer. And it's interesting to be able to pivot like that and take your brand in a different direction and to be able to move that quickly. That's a huge opportunity. And I guess the resonance of what that's going to do is going to last well beyond, as we go through this period of time. And that's going to be key to really making sure that brands are
Agreed.
strong.
I think we already answered the question, but let's go there anyway. What's the worst thing that brands, what are some examples of brands that if we want to dare mention them, that you're seeing where it's kind of like, that's not quite hitting the mark, or what's the worst things we could be doing right now? I think we touched on it, but I'd love to hear more from you around that.
Yeah, I think that it comes to this idea of intention. I don't think anyone has bad intentions. I think that some people are fighting for their businesses. I think that some people are, trying to keep their workforce together. There's a lot of good intention that's behind some of this, but they're just not getting the messaging right. I haven't seen too many examples where where you're kind of looking at it going, oh, they should not be doing that. But there are some things where it's just maybe not the right messaging. And again, I would say as a rule of thumb for your viewers and for the people who are listening, it's not so much doing the wrong thing. It's also about doing the thing that's maybe not quite needed right now. So not necessarily offering, we're business as usual and our employees are still coming to work and that's not what people want to hear right now. They don't want to hear that your employees are still coming to work. There are essential workers that are putting their health on the line to actually do jobs where we do need them to go to work.
Right.
So, if you're not an essential service, maybe don't talk about that. The other thing is really, don't necessarily talk about, well, you can still buy from us at this time and we're going to do whatever. I mean, there are some car companies that are doing some great things, but then there's other car companies that are saying, well, we're going to push your payments out by 3 months. Okay, well, is 3 months going to be enough? And should I really be buying a car right now? So, I mean, it's not wrong, and I understand why they're doing it. And I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but the idea is that, maybe let's not talk about that right now. Let's talk about what we can be doing to either support the supply chain heroes or the medical heroes that are really getting us through this right now. I mean, because food and health are the two most important things right now. And I think that, anything that we're doing to support those groups would be good for our brand to do if we can do that. So that would be a really good thing to do right now.
I think that's excellent. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other part is like you said earlier, that idea of listening and just putting out messaging where your voice should be there, right? We don't need everybody and their brother talking about washing our hands. We know that, and there are people who should be telling us that, and we should all be aware of that, but we don't all need to get
Well, it's like that sign guy. Do you follow the sign guy where he's like, stop posting your yoga videos and stop? Like, I love him because it's exactly what we're all really feeling. It's like, yes, everybody's working from home. Like, again, it's that tone deaf. Like, we don't care if you're working out at home. We all are, It's like kind of getting that sense of where people are at. So can you give any examples of clients that you work with that you're proud of the way they pivoted in this crisis or other crises? Or is there anybody coming to mind around that? Yeah.
Yeah. So we, when this all happened, we did exactly what I'm advising listeners to do, which is take a look at what you can offer and only talk about those kinds of things. So we put a campaign together, and our campaign message was, we're not doctors, but we want to help. And we kind of use different things. So we're not first responders, but we want to help. We're not nurses, but we want to help. We're not store clerks, but we want to help. And so we put the word out. And a client that we had worked with in the past that does a whole bunch of medical kinds of things came to us and said, we're trying to put together a hub where we can gather information on COVID, and we'd really love your help to do that. And so we offered our time and our services to help them do that. So we're in the midst of that right now, and there'll be more information of it coming forward. But it's really about using our skill set to help them brand and put together a site that will become a hub to gather information that will lead in the fight against COVID-19. And if it goes on for as long as it goes on, this will be there to gather data and information that will help in the fight against it. So we kind of pivoted our business a little bit, but we're seeing some of our other clients that are doing the same. We work with the Canadian Olympic Committee, Team Canada, and for a long time, there was a question of whether the Olympics would be delayed, and eventually they were. But Team Canada is really trying to put messaging out there now that talks about Canadian resiliency and talks about, the fact that we're all in this together. And that's some really good messaging that we all need right now to help deal with some of our anxiety. And so we see a lot of brands trying to do that pivot. And so use your channels, use your social channels, use your website if you can, use your influence to help people through this time, because that will resonate a lot as your brand goes forward. And yes, we have to keep our businesses as strong as we possibly can through this. There's still that part of it as well. But if you have an ability to really take your business in a different direction, I mean, Cheryl, I'm going to share with all the listeners. I mean, you offer amazing online courses, and they have always been part of your offering, but now you and I have been talking more about how can we take those online courses in a different place, because now is the time where people are at home and they need that kind of ability to improve their skill set, perhaps. So that's an area that you're able to kind of take it. And I think that a lot of businesses have those opportunities. It's about finding what those are and really listening to what people are looking for right now.
Yeah, and I don't mind you sharing that example, because as a future of work consultancy, we have multiple revenue streams, and the online courses have been there and have been an offering to our clients, but we've not, as you said, as a brand, positioned them for the general public to be able to access them and use them as valid resources and tools. And so we saw that as an opportunity. And again, not from an opportunistic way, but from a way of, we've got these high value offerings. Let's spend some time in putting those in front of the right people where it might be helpful for them at this time. So then I'm fine with you using us as an example, because we're happy customers and we're doing that. So how is branding going to ensure future success? Like I know for us, I can speak to that for us. I mean, having that branding so solid right now, we're being asked a lot for interviews on remote work. What's next? Our brand is next mapping. So we're very well positioned with branding, and I can speak to the power of that. But why is it so important now at this time that people have that solid brand?
It's important because really, going back to something I said earlier, if your brand is your promise, because some people will look at it and they'll say, oh yeah, well, it's the logo, it's the name, it's all of these things. And yes, it is all of those things, but ultimately it's your promise and your reputation out in the marketplace. And so, as human beings, you hear those quotes all the time, is we don't learn when things are going well, we learn when the chips are down. And this is a real opportunity for brands to learn about where they might want to go next. We're in a period right now where we have the opportunity to reflect. Those of us who aren't on the front lines, the people on the front lines are kind of fighting for us. But those of us who do have that opportunity to kind of reflect, we can look at our brands and say, okay, have we been doing everything that we could be doing? Have we been going in the right direction, or were we kind of caught up in the stream of where the business was going? This gives us the opportunity to kind of step back for a moment, look at our business, look at our direction, and decide, if the world is going to change slightly as we move forward. Like, for example, we are going to be way more online after this than we ever were in the past. Yeah. And the reason is because we were kind of forced into this situation where we had to kind of take everything online. We just recently did our podcast, Everything is Brand, it's called, on Spotify and Apple and everything. But we recently did a podcast where we said, is your brand online enough? Because the truth is that up until now, you could kind of dip your toe in the water of being online and making sure that your brand was online. But after this, it is going to be required. And if you are not, and it's not just about having a website and social channels. Yes, those are kind of the bare minimum. But the other part is, how are you interacting with your customers online? Yes. How are you enabling your employees online? How are you delivering the brand experience online? These are the real important questions that you need to be asking yourself right now, and taking this opportunity to reflect on that and make sure that you're ready for, when we come out of this pandemic situation.
Yeah. You just made me think of something when you were saying about, listening and all of that. I'm just referring back to previous to the conversation. And we recently in our weekly newsletter just sent out a poll to listen even more. And the survey is actually called, how are you feeling about the future? So it's actually an emotional question about how are you feeling about the future? And we've set it up so that people can get real-time results and see what other people are responding. So that's not something we did before. But after having our conversation with you, we went, you know what? We want to show that we're listening, and online people want to interact. When I keynote on stage, I'm asking people to text message me and interact. This is a way I can interact online even more than I already have. I've been dipping my toe there, but now it's like, no, I want to listen even more. And I want to hear it all, the good, the bad, the ugly, so that we can really, with our brand, match up how to help, because that's really why any of us have our businesses, is we want to ultimately make a difference. That's why we, that's our mission, vision, and values. So 2 more questions, and then we'll call it quits. The next one is, what are the trends in branding that you're seeing? And people always want to know, what are the trends? Is it mobile website? Is it should I be on LinkedIn? Should I be on LinkedIn Live? What are some of your thoughts about the branding trends?
So the answer is yes, and yes. And the reason for that is like, and a good example of how you can kind of look at the trends in branding, you could easily look at the entertainment industry as an example.
Yes.
There is so much diversification across channels now that there's no one way to reach people. You can't do it with a movie or a TV show, and you definitely can't do it with your brand. So it's really about knowing who your audience is and where they live. And, before where they might have lived in a singular place, now they might live across a whole bunch of different areas. Brands are even looking at TikTok. Cheryl, I'm sure you're familiar with TikTok.
I'm on TikTok. I haven't done a video yet, but I'm on it. Yeah.
So addictive, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the reality is that, brands have to really see what's going on in kind of the zeitgeist and figure out, okay, how do we come to that party or that area? And it's across a whole bunch of different things that before, you could put an article in a newspaper or a commercial on television. That just doesn't work anymore. So the trend is really more about being as diversified as possible, really making sure that you're exploring all the channels where your audience lives and what channels are important to them.
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to the listening. I'm going to keep saying listening over and over and over again, because one of the great things that social media gives us is the opportunity to listen to our audiences in a way that we never were able to before.
Great.
And so, stop worrying about what you're posting and worry more about the comments that people are making.
Yes.
Obviously the posts have to be strong and on brand and reasonable, but then look at the comments, look at the feedback, understand what the expectation is, because that will give you a ton of information of where to go next. And it really becomes this opportunity to understand your brand from the eyes of your customer. And that's probably the biggest trend, is stop worrying about how you only want to be positioned and worry a little bit more about what expectations your customers have for you and how you're going to meet those expectations.
Yeah, I think what the shift is, I think what another sort of what we're going to see in hindsight post-pandemic is that this situation has forced us to listen more closely, but also to be more empathetic, to be more compassionate, to see things from a very wide range of perspectives. Because what you're saying really isn't a trend. That's been a branding credo right? But I think what's happening is for brands that have gotten away with telling people who they are, that's not going to be successful in the future. You need to be interacting with people. And one thing I love, Gwyneth Paltrow with Goop, right? She doesn't care what people think. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that she's true to her brand.
Right.
And because she's true to her brand and because she listens and she's tuning into the zeitgeist, and some people would say she's tone deaf, but we won't go there on this. But, I would say that what she has done well in observing her brand is she's true to her brand. So
right.
In that way, others would say she's tone deaf to the people that have less than her and all of that. And I don't disagree with that. But I just, that came to my mind as an example. Any final thoughts on branding in the future? And how do you feel? I'll ask you my survey question. Do you feel optimistic about the future and why? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think we always have to feel optimistic about the future, because if we don't, we're not going to build the future that is going to come. If we don't have an optimistic view of the future and we're pessimistic about it, the future will become more pessimistic than optimistic, because we create it. Right?
Yeah,
So that's an important part of how we have to deal with it as we go forward. So yes, I am 100% optimistic about what's coming next. I think that what I want to do myself is I want to recognize the anxiety I have during this period, because it is a very anxious time for all of us. But I also want to, take a look at what my brain says is going to come next, and really tap into this idea that, we can come out of this. And if and when we do come out of this pandemic, we need to be ready. And we need to understand where we want to take our businesses and our brands from here. Mm-hmm. So, this real opportunity right now is to just really reflect and understand all of the things that are going to drive us in the future, all of the things that are going to help us in the future. Talk to other people, whether it's your peers, whether it's your family, whether it's, business associates. understand what their hopes, fears, and dreams are for the future so that you can then interpret that for your brand and understand how you want to position yourself coming out of this. There is a real opportunity here for organizations to rethink where they've been, because it's not going to be business as usual. We are going to have to adapt. And all of that information exists in our conversations with each other. So even though we have to physically distance, we don't need to socially distance, and we don't need to business distance. We can still talk to each other and understand how we can help each other out. And that will help us drive to where brand can take us, because the next iteration of our business is going to be in a bit of a different world than it was last time. And we have to make sure that the brand is ready for that.
Agreed completely. And when you say anxiety, acknowledging the range of emotions, I just did a video about this today and posted it on YouTube around, we're all wobbly right now. So even I'm a natural optimist. I find myself in the range of sad, anxious, nervous, and then I find myself getting excited. So there's this big range of emotion that we have to acknowledge in each other. But I also find that in the video I talked about the reason we're anxious about the future is because it's really down to trust. Do we trust ourselves? Now, if we have a solid brand, I trust the brand. I trust myself. I trust that I have the skills, the flexibility, the agility to handle whatever comes my way. But I also trust the future. And by trusting the future, that means we have faith that we are doing the right things. And so I think in this time, you can either have inertia because of the anxiety, or as you're saying throughout the entire interview, use this time to listen, reflect, but that doesn't mean you're not also planning. So that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, 100% planning. Yeah.
So
when have we had this time before? It's interesting. I read this great post on Twitter probably about a week ago, and it said, it was very simple, but it said, turns out that I wasn't doing those things because I didn't have time.
Do you know how many clients I've talked to that have said, oh my gosh, I was burned out?
Yep.
Or, oh my gosh, I was going way too fast. Or, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that my kid had ADHD. Like, honestly, the number of things I'm hearing from people, it kind of goes, wow, this was a global timeout. Right. That's causing all of us to reflect, think about not just our work and our brand, but our lives, how we show up. It's very powerful. I think it's a socially important time. And I think post-pandemic, we're going to be a very different society. I really do. So. And
to kind of bring it full circle, brands have to be ready for that. Those are going to be your new customers and your new clients. And the expectations of what people will want from here are really important to that. So be ready for that and understand that that's the world that you're taking your brand into after this.
Agreed. Well, very, very, I always enjoy talking to you, Brad, but very insightful, I think very helpful for our listeners and viewers. Thanks so much. And for the listeners and viewers, if you want more information, go to zync.ca, ZY or ZYNC. ZYNC.ca. And find more out about Brad. You're on all the social channels as well. Zync is on
under Zync Agency. Yeah. If you Google Zync Agency, you'll find us everywhere.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for your time, Brad.
Thank you, Cheryl.
The future is now.